This is my ruling. I issued a directive in this matter on the basis that it was made under Regulation 8.3, read with Regulation 7.3, which reads as follows: any witness appearing before the commission may be any witness, whether implicated or not, may be cross-examined by a person only if the chairperson permits such cross-examination should she or he deem it necessary in the best interest of the functions of the commission. It is my considered view, having heard Mr. Bana on behalf of Advocate Muga in his objection, that my ruling cannot, my directive cannot be varied, but I direct that it be varied to the extent that the direction gave Mr. Muga the right to be cross-examined today. I therefore direct that cross-examination of Mr. Muga be on a date to be determined by this commission.
As the commission pleases.
As the commission pleases.
Thank you, Chair. Is it envisaged that the evidence in chief of Mr. Nguka is given today, or do we
Yes,
adjourn him
it is
completely?
envisaged that we will proceed with the evidence in chief of Mr. Nguka.
Thank you. Chair, may we also, while you're considering practical issues, raise this? We'd ask then that in the light of your ruling, that you amplify your ruling, that the examination of Mr. Nguka is going to be in relation to those aspects identified in his statement.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's of course a blind
Yes.
free-for-all.
Yes.
So if we can
Yes.
confirm that. And also what would assist is we've been given 2 lever arch files by Weber Wenzel at 10 o'clock this morning of documents that may be put to Mr. Nguka. Now, we're told that they're all somewhere in the applications, but of course it doesn't help to trawl through 2 lever arch files. If you can direct that they simply give us a list of the page numbers of the documents that are going to be put. It will also shorten the time spent with Mr. Nguka and how long we'll need to come back on the adjourned day for the cross-examination.
Yes, Mr. Vani, are you able to assist Mr. Bana in regard to that?
Yes, we can do that, Chairperson.
Yes, now that we have sufficient time to plan for that.
As the commission pleases.
Yes. And may I just get an indication from the evidence leader, what time span are we looking at in terms of inviting Advocate Muga to come back for his cross-examination?
Chair would think 14 days would be a reasonable period for cross-examination to happen, but we're not inflexible about that.
Yes. Mr. Pana?
Chair, we have no difficulty with the time period. Obviously, it will be at a time that can accommodate us
Yes.
reasonably.
So 2 weeks would be sufficient time for you
Yes,
to
subject,
prepare Mr. Nguga for his cross-examination?
indeed, subject to diaries. And if we can also just ask then that Mr. Varney's a list of documents that are going to be put, if those can be given to us within the next, he obviously came today ready and knows the list, if it can be given to us within 2 days.
I direct that the list to be provided or to be furnished by Weber Wenzel be given to the Tabata attorneys by the 4th of March, 2026.
We shall do so, Chairperson.
Thank you. Mr. Panay, your witness.
Thank you, Chair. If I can have half a minute just to get organized.
Mr. Pana, would it be convenient for us to adjourn now for tea in order to properly prepare Mr. Nguga for his evidence in chief before we proceed?
Chair, we're in your hands. We can proceed now, or we can take the tea adjournment.
I think it will be convenient to take a tea adjournment and reconvene rather at 11:05.
As it pleases.
We'll take a short adjournment. statement. Mr. Bana?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Nguka. How are you today?
I'm fine, and thank you very much.
Good, thank you. Can I call you Advocate Nguka?
No, call me Bulela.
Shall we proceed to take an oath before you proceed,
Yes.
Mr. Bana?
Thank you, Chair.
Advocate Nguka, are you going to take an oath or an affirmation? Please state your full, an oath. An oath.
Yes, an oath.
Please state your full names for the record.
My name is Bulelani Tandabantu Nguka.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. Mr. Bana, your witness.
Thank you very much, Chair. Advocate Nguka, you made a statement dated, it simply says February 2026, but I believe it was furnished on the 24th of
That's
February
correct.
2026. You have that statement before you.
That's correct.
What I propose to do is just to give you a chance to go very briefly through the initial portions of the statement, and when we get to the sections that deal with the allegations of attempts to influence or pressure the NPA from paragraph 35, I will then put particular paragraphs to you. So firstly, do you confirm the statement that you made on 24th February 2026? Do you confirm it under oath?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Can you then, very briefly, because a lot of it is set out in the statement, and I might add, very impressively so, just tell the Commission, firstly, about your personal background?
Yes. Well, I state there that I was born in Middledrift in the Eastern Cape, and that I studied at the University of Fort Hare, where I obtained my BProc degree. And whilst at the university, in fact, in 1997, when Steve Biko died in police custody, 1977, yes, we organized a memorial service. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Advocate.
I state that we, as students, we organized a memorial service to commemorate the death of Steve Biko in police custody. The rector of the university at the time refused us to use the Great Hall, which forced us to organize the memorial service, to have the memorial service at the sports stadium. We were then arrested and sent to Kwanongong, which is Fort Glamorgan in East London. We spent about a week there, and then we were charged with contravention of the Writers' Assemblies Act and sentenced initially to 30 rand or 30 days imprisonment, which was later on appeal converted to a caution and discharge. Completed my degree, worked for a short while at Mtanzane as a prosecutor, and then I was offered articles of clerkship by the late Griffiths Mxenge. I served my articles with him, and at that time, the practice mainly focused on political trials and human rights cases. Some of the cases that were handled were those of Joseph Mduli, who also was killed by the police. And then the Biko family, who represent the Biko family, who represented the Mohapi family, who also was killed by the police in custody. So we handled a number of trials, including the PAC trial in Bethel, that of Zef Ntuping. GM was killed by the police on the 19th of November. I accompanied Mrs. Mxenge to the mortuary. That's where we found GM. The stab wounds in his body were just too much to bear. I was then helped the family to organize his funeral. I was detained on the 30th of November 1981, spent 8 months in solitary confinement. And later I was then asked to give evidence against my colleagues, Patrick Ndaweko Makubela, and 2 others who were charged with high treason. I refused to testify. I was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment, which I served in various prisons, including Lukop, Victor Versteeg, Elderstrom in Caledon, and so forth. The day before 2 days before I was released in 1985, I was visited by Mrs. Mxenge, who was then running the firm, together with my wife. We spent a day together. I was still in prison. The following day, I was informed by the head of the prison that the woman who had visited me had died. I later learned that it was Mrs. Mxenge who had died. I was released on the 3rd of August, and from prison I was taken straight to the mortuary to visit Mrs. Mxenge. Later I left. I went to Switzerland. I joined the International Labour Office, worked there in the Equality of Rights branch called Egalite, participated in the anti-apartheid movement. Then I studied, I forgot something. When I was in prison, I also completed my LLB with UNISA. And when I was in Geneva, I then did my master's at the University of Webster, focusing on international relations. Again, when I was in prison, I forgot that. The Law Society made an application to have me struck off roll. I resisted that, and successfully too. And so I came back into the country after the stint in Geneva. I came back and then settled in Cape Town, joined the firm of N.J. Yekiso and Associates, back into doing political trials. I was again detained in 1988 because as the UDF, we then decided to organize a celebration of Mr. Mandela's 70th birthday. You might recall that that year, the anti-apartheid movement in the UK had organized a big concert at Wembley Stadium. We decided to do the same thing. I was then detained because of the chairman of the Mandela Birthday Committee. I was detained under the state of emergency, spent a month or so in prison, was released, went back to practice. In 1989, I was again detained because at that time we organized the Defiance Campaign, and I was one of the leaders in the Western Cape of that Defiance Campaign. Detained again, spent another 2 months in prison. Upon my release, I was served with a banning order confining me to Newlands Magisterial District, which included Guguletu. No visits between 6 in the evening and 6 in the morning. Could not be visited by more than 2 people at a time. And that was it. And then 1990, with the unbanning of the ANC, I was invited to serve on the ANC Constitutional Committee. We then drafted the ANC's position in the negotiations, participated in the negotiations, and then went to Parliament. I was the chief whip of the majority party in the Senate. I served in the various committees. I chaired the joint committee that appointed the Human Rights Commission, the joint committee that appointed the Public Protector, served on the Rules Committee, served on the Judicial Services Commission. With the new constitution, I also served on the Constitutional Assembly, served on the Constitutional Committee of the Constitutional Assembly, led the discussions on the judiciary, And so, with the adoption of the new constitution, I was appointed the deputy chair of the National Council of Provinces, and then a year later was appointed the National Director of Public Prosecutions.
Yes, if you can just pause there for a moment. You appointed on the 1st of August 1998, and when did your term of office end?
I assumed office on the 1st of August, and I left office on the 31st of August, 2004.
Now, you wanted to include some of this background in the statement, and can you just explain to the Commission the reason why you wanted to put this before the Commission and how this influenced your attitude to cases that had come before the TRC?
Okay. Thank you. No, I thought it's important that the Commission understands who the person who assumed this office and what my background is and why I treated these cases, the TRC cases, in the manner in which I did. Two things that I didn't mention that I think are important. Joseph Mkhuli, I've mentioned, was killed by the police. 4 of them were later charged. And one of those was a guy called Andy Taylor. And this was the guy who investigated us when we were detained. They were charged, subsequently charged, and their case was dismissed at the end of the state case. It was badly handled. Later, you might know, there was a case of General Magnus Malan. They were charged just before 1994. They themselves, again, that case was dismissed at the end of the state case. It was badly handled. And so I took the decision that these cases, I didn't want that to happen to them. And so that's why I had these cases handled in my office.
So what was your personal attitude or standing as to the vigor with which cases that emanated from matters revealed at the TRC should be prosecuted?
No, I mean, I really wanted those cases to be prosecuted, seriously so. I wanted the people who had committed those atrocities to be charged and sentenced. And that's a conviction that I had.
Yes. Just to pick up on a portion of your statement, and in paragraph 15 of your statement, you were not served a notice to appear before this commission or subpoenaed to come before the commission. You have come before this commission voluntarily, sir, is that correct?
That's correct.
And why do you do so?
Because I thought that it would assist the commission if I gave the background to what happened and what I did, because these cases were referred to my office at the time when I was the national director. And therefore, I thought it is important that I have to account about what I did when I received these cases. And so to give the commission the background to the work that I initiated.
And you're here to give frank evidence to assist the commission in its work, is that correct?
That's correct.
Can I pick up at paragraph 18 of your statement, and if you can just elaborate on that? Basically, you deal with the position you found when you started at the NDPP, and in particular, we're interested in the position as to resources that were there and available.
Yes. Well, when I reported for work on the 1st of August, I went to the Department of Justice and I met with the Director General, who told me that they've budgeted 6 million for my office. And that money was sufficient to pay for my salary and a few people that will employ, that it will take me probably another 6 months or so to set up the office. I had no office, nothing. So I went around looking for offices. And when I found the offices, there was no furniture, nothing, absolutely nothing. And there was a great expectation from government and from people that my office will solve some of the problems that were prevailing in the country at the time. And so I came into office literally with nothing. I was fortunate in that my brother-in-law was working at the Reserve Bank. And the Reserve Bank had this habit of changing their furniture every 5 years. So I inherited the furniture from the Reserve Bank. That's how I started my office. And I was then forced to rely on other government agencies for the work that I had to do. So I had to foster relations with the Department of Justice, with the police, with the intelligence, and all other government departments, and work very closely with them. And those are the people who helped me to set up the office.
Generally, can you talk about the level of availability of resources in your office at the time, and perhaps take us through to the end of your tenure in 2004? What limitations were there on resources? How readily were resources available? How did you have to prioritize decisions?
Oh yes, I mean, we really had a challenge. When I was in government, when we came into office in 1994, it's a matter of public record that we inherited a country that was bankrupt, had no money. And so I knew that. And so the resources that were available to us to set up these structures were very, very limited. And hence we relied a great extent on cooperation with the other departments, sharing the resources, which were very, very limited. There was a problem.
How did that change, if at all, by the time you left office in 2004?
No. It had not changed, but it had improved.
Considerably? Was there still a tension fighting for resources to investigate different types of crime?
There were serious tensions. We used to fight a great deal with Treasury. Because those guys, they will tell you that they are trained to say no whenever you go and ask for money. So, indeed, that was a problem.
And did that place a constraint on how resources were allocated? Choices had to be made, and did that scenario persist by the time you left in 2004? I understand it might have gotten a bit better because you fought for resources and you did a whole lot of things, but was there ever a position where there were ample resources available to do whatever was necessary to be done in your office?
No, we didn't. We didn't have enough resources, even up to the time I left. I mean, I make the point, for example, that when I established the Specialized Commercial Crimes Unit, we had a big problem. Commercial cases were not being prosecuted because it did not have experienced investigators to do that. And we had files that were collecting dust here in the Johannesburg office. And so I had to work with the Business Against Crime to establish the courts. The first court that we set up was in Pretoria. And also had to employ investigators from the private sector. And I had to use the Business Against Crime for us to be able to do that work. So that speaks to the availability of resources.
Yes. In your statement in paragraph 19, you say, I inherited a prosecution service which was characterized by low staff morale, which lacked credibility and legitimacy in the eyes of the majority of society, which viewed the prosecution services as part and parcel of the state's oppressive state machinery. There was also high levels of criminality, particularly in areas such as the Western Cape. In that year, there were 166 pipe bomb incidents and no arrests or prosecutions. In KwaZulu-Natal, there was extreme political violence, and Gauteng experienced a high level of car hijacking. Can you, against that, give the Commission a feel for the different areas of criminality, if I can call it that, which you had to turn your attention to and devote limited resources to?
Yes. We had, excuse me, we had serious problems in the Western Cape. Gangsterism, as well as there was an organization called Pakat, which started off fighting gangsters. But at the end, they themselves were the perpetrators of violence in that area. I'll give you one example. There were a number of bombs that were exploding. There's one that exploded in the Hollywood cinema, in the waterfront. Again, you also had one of the investigators in that case who was killed, where the magistrate who also was killed by the same people in the Western Cape. And there were no successful arrests or prosecutions. And so I had to start a new unit called the Investigating Directorate on Organized Crime and Corruption, where I had to work with the police and the intelligence people, take those and put them under my wing, working flat out. I started what was then known in South Africa as prosecution-led investigations. Because in the past, they were working separately. The investigators will be on their own. They will investigate a case after a year or two, and then bring the docket to the AG's office. We'll take another 6 months starting the docket and then issuing instructions, which delayed matters. So I changed that. I brought all those under one roof, the intelligence, the investigators, analysts, and prosecutors, all working together. And we succeeded in ending that violence in the Western Cape. At the end of the day, when we were done, we had probably more than 100 people who had been arrested and charged and others served life imprisonment. Equally, we had experienced serious levels of violence in KZN, particularly in an area called Richmond. We had, in a space of 3 weekends, more than 100 people killed. We worked on that. I established another entity in KZN that is focused exactly using the same model, focused on dealing with those. And I appointed a guy called Chris Macadam to lead that investigation. And they did very well. We again were able to succeed, to find those people, prosecute them, and have them sentenced. So we dealt with those issues.
Yes.
Similar things happened here in Gauteng with carjackings. In the past, we had focused just on arresting the people who were behind, who were doing the hijackings. But when we started, we said, no, let's look for the kingpins. Because the guys who are running around taking the cars, they sell them somewhere. There is somebody who's organizing, who orders these things, and we focused on that. And again, I'm happy to say we're very successful with the work that we did.
The picture that emerges is a number of priority areas requiring prosecution, competing areas competing for limited resources.
That's correct.
Is that the environment which you refer to in your statement and which you confirm was to be found at the NPA while you were there?
That's correct.
You then, in your statement, deal with TRC matters, and perhaps you can very briefly take us through that, essentially paragraphs 25 to 34 of your statement.
Yes. I think it's important to note that when I set up the NPA, I inherited the people who were working there. And some of these people are the ones who were prosecuting us when we were waging the struggle. And so I had to deal with these people that I believed, correctly so, that indeed they were part and parcel of the system that was oppressing us. And so I had to work with them. So I was worried. I was worried that I could not have the very same people to prosecute the TRC cases. And so when I received the report from the TRC, the first thing I did was to appoint then Vincent Saldana, who I knew from Cape Town. I'd worked with him.
Is that Judge Saldana now?
That Judge Vincent Saldana now. I knew him very well. And I then appointed somebody else also from the office, who was based in the Johannesburg office, Brink Ferreira. I asked them to do an assessment of these cases. Because I needed to have a record and know which cases were ready for prosecution, which cases needed to be further investigated, what the shortcomings were, and so forth. They did that. And then they gave me a report. Based on their report, we then agreed that we needed to have a specialized unit in my office that will give focused attention on the TRC matters, which is why we then created what we then called the Priority Crimes Unit, and appointed Anton Ackerman to head that.
Yes.
Anton had just finished doing the long case that he was involved with, involving Vota Passon. So I then appointed him to do that.
Yes. Perhaps just before we go further on that, in paragraph 27 of your statement, you say, you firstly talk about the Human Rights Investigative Unit, which we've abbreviated as HRIU, and you then say the HRIU report identified challenges in several high-profile cases. Notwithstanding the rejection of several amnesty applications by the TRC, the available evidence in many cases was not, in the unit's assessment, sufficient to sustain a successful prosecution in a number of these cases. In some cases, offences had prescribed. In others, witness availability or reliability presented insurmountable obstacles. Many additional matters could not be processed to prosecution stage due to the pending amnesty committee applications brought by suspects, further delaying decision-making. You obviously confirm that, but perhaps can you just elaborate on that?
Yes.
briefly?
No, I do confirm that. There were some of the cases, you take, for example, you take the Biko case. In that case, we realized that we did not have sufficient evidence to get a conviction. We knew, we all knew that the police had killed Steve. We knew that. And so to go and take those police to court when we didn't have sufficient evidence, they would have been acquitted. And would have ended up with egg on our faces to go and prosecute a case that you know you're going to lose. The evidence was just not enough for us to do that. So those are some
I
of the
presume
challenges.
channeling limited resources to prosecuting those cases which you took a view would not, you would not get a prosecution on.
But I mean, most importantly, Counsel, was that you're going to go and take people to court well knowing that you're going to lose. It would have been wrong.
Yes. In paragraph 28, you deal with Mr. Silas Ramaite, and then you say you decided that all TRC cases should be brought to the Special National Projects Unit, SNPU, within the Scorpions, headed by Chris McAdam. Is there anything you wish to elaborate on in that respect?
Yes. Silas informed me that there were these cases that were, these dockets, in fact, that were in the Pretoria office. These are old cases, and that nothing was being done about them. Nobody was paying any attention to those cases. And so we then realized that it is possible that in also other DPP's offices throughout the country, there may well be some of these cases that are there and which are not getting the attention they deserve. So it is on that basis that I then issued the directive that all these TRC cases must be centralized and be brought to my office.
And classified as priority crimes, as you state in paragraph 31 of your statement.
Correctly so.
And you say that was to ensure a single, specialized, nationally coordinated approach to prosecutions emerging from the TRC.
Correct.
In paragraph 32, you say, after assessing evidentiary sufficiency, witness availability, legal viability, and the prospects of a constitutionally compliant prosecution, the PCLU identified approximately 21 cases warranting further investigation.
Yes.
You confirm that?
Yes, I confirm that.
And I don't know if it's from those 21 cases, but by the time you left office, I understand at least 6 cases were taken to court, so to speak, of those cases that the office identified warranting further investigation.
That's correct.
In terms of the benchmark and the environment that was at the NPA, in your assessment, was that a good track record or not?
Oh yes, that was good work that had been done. The guys had worked flat out, given the limited resources that they had. I was satisfied with the work that the unit had performed at the time. I was very impressed with the work that they did.
We then get to the section that deals with the allegations of attempts to influence or pressure the NPA to stop investigations or prosecutions during your tenure. And can you deal with paragraph 35 of your statement, please?
There were no attempts during my time. Nobody tried to do anything. I mean, there were no such attempts at the time. But what I can then say, probably we're going to get to it. We were invited into a meeting that was convened by the Director General of the Department of Justice to look into amending the prosecutorial policy insofar as it dealt with the TRC matters. My office was represented then by one of my advisors, Lungisa Josi, and another guy called Gerard Nel. Gerard Nel's responsibility in my office was to prepare legislation that had to go to Parliament. He was specializing, he was drafting legislation. We discovered early on that it is important for us as the NPA, if any legislation is to be passed, that we are consulted and that we contribute to it. And so we created that capacity in my office. So Gerard and Lungisa went to that meeting, and they came back and reported to me what had transpired in the meeting. And their view, which I accepted, was that there's no need for us to participate in that forum, and that there was no need for us to change the prosecutorial guidelines that we had. And that's it.
Yes. In paragraph 35, you also state, I am also not aware of any collusion by any member of the NPA with any such attempt to stop the NPA from investigating or prosecuting TRC cases.
Yeah. Nothing of the sort happened during my tenure.
Mr. Nkuka,
Yes, sir.
the invitation by the Director General that we have referred to, you don't have a date for that? Were
No.
any minutes
No.
taken?
I don't know. You remember, Commissioner, I didn't attend that meeting myself. And so my colleagues had gone to the meeting and they came back and reported to me, and that was it. As far as I'm concerned, the matter ended there. So I was not aware of any minutes or dates. I can't remember the date, but it would have been somewhere in 2003.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner. Advocate Nguka, in paragraph 36, you say, I have in the above background set out the context and circumstances in which the office of the NPA was established within an evolving prosecutorial environment at a time when South Africa was establishing for the first time a single independent national prosecuting authority. This required significant institutional reform, the development of new systems, policies and standards, and the consolidation of prosecutorial functions previously dispersed across apartheid-era structures.
That is so.
And you go on to say, in 37, the prosecutorial terrain during the early 2000s was new, complex, constantly evolving, necessary to build national capacity, ensure consistency, establish specialized units, restore public confidence and in the prosecuting authority. These institutional priorities required careful allocation of limited resources and personnel.
I confirm that.
Do we understand that the competition for resources was not just across these very high-profile crime areas, but also on an administrative front, that there were huge challenges in terms of resources?
That's correct.
And you say in 38, within this context, the NPA was simultaneously confronted with high-profile resource-intensive matters, including complex commercial crime prosecutions, organized crime syndicates, national security cases, and international law matters arising from South Africa's obligations under the Rome Statute. This reinforces what you said earlier by way of the examples that you gave.
Yes.
I just want to go back to an aspect. In paragraph 35, you said you were not aware of any collusion by any member of the NPA or any attempt to stop an investigation or prosecution. Had there been such an attempt, I'm postulating a hypothetical, had there been such an attempt or an approach made to you, what would your attitude have been and why?
Okay. You know, when you are the national director, you get all sorts of approaches. People come every other day trying to influence you, to persuade you. You do this, can you help me? Can you have this case with them? Can you do that? You listen and you tell them where to get off. And so, if there had been such an attempt, I would have been able to say, no. This is not how things work. This is what works. And this is what I will do. At the end of the day, the decision remains mine and mine alone. And I would be able to say, no. I don't go along with this. And I did that successfully throughout. But I was never even approached on this one.
Yes.
To say, can we do this? No. At the time I left, no one had approached me. I was very sure about this case.
This being the
Given
TRC case.
cases, yes. Given my relationship with the victims of these cases, you know Mrs. Mxeng? She was killed on the 2nd of August a week before, she was the main speaker at the funeral of Goniwe Nkalata in Kredok. And later she was killed. And so this is something that I hold very dear. And it's something that I wanted to do. And her killers have never been found. Never been found. And those are things that I wanted to do.
And how would that position or that attitude, that sympathy have factored into any decision had you been appointed to be influenced not to proceed with cases?
Never. Never. You know, this thing about political interference, it would happen if you allow it. If you allow it as national director, then of course there will be. But at the end of the day, what I've been saying is the decision is yours and yours alone. And you tell people, no, this is not how this is going to work. I mean, I can give you a number of examples about a number of other cases where people have tried to persuade me not to take action. Sending lawyers, advocates, making
would those be
representations.
non-TRC related cases?
Yes. Yes. But I was able to rebuff all those attempts and say no. So it never happened during my time. If it had happened, I would have been able to say no, sorry, it's not going to happen.
Yes. And in paragraph 39, if we can just go back to the statement, you say that TRC cases presented particular evidential and operational challenges. They were decades old, relied heavily on witnesses whose memories had faded or were no longer available, and required intensive investigation in an environment where both investigative and prosecutorial resources were severely constrained. Evidence had also been destroyed in many cases. And then in paragraph 40, you say decisions that were taken at the time were not a function of political preference or external influence. They were driven by the need to ensure that prosecutions proceeded only where there was a reasonable prospect of success, where the evidential foundation could sustain a successful prosecution in accordance with prosecution policy and policy directives. The limited progress on certain TRC cases must therefore be understood within the broader context of the NPA's developmental stage, the competing demands on its scarce resources, and the operational complexities inherent in prosecuting apartheid-era crimes decades after they occurred. Can you perhaps elaborate for the commissioners on those aspects?
But I thought I'd already referred, for example, to the Biko case, you see, which really speaks to this paragraph, because these were the challenges that we had. These were the shortcomings that we experienced.
Yes. Can we then deal, in paragraph 41, you round this off by saying, at no stage did I receive, tolerate, or act on any instructions designed to shield any individual, organization, or political actor from lawful prosecution. Do you confirm that again?
I do.
And the decisions that you say were taken were consistent with the NPA's constitutional mandate, informed by its prosecutorial policy, evidential sufficiency, institutional capacity, and the need to build a functional and credible NPA. You confirm that?
Yes, I do.
Can you just then round this aspect off, and you've briefly spoken about it, with what you state in paragraph 42? For years as an activist and practicing attorney, I acted for families of those murdered by apartheid police. That work was not peripheral to my professional life and my very being. As NDPP, I was at all times fully committed to ensure there was accountability for the grave human rights violations of the past.
Correct.
Lastly, under the heading, the response to the allegation that you did not approach the President, in paragraph 43, one deals with certain vermins that arise in the Kalata affidavit. Can you speak to that?
Yes, I mean, there's a letter that was written by Commissioner Dibier to Anton. There's a letter that was written by Commissioner Dibier, who was in charge of detectives, written to Anton Ackerman, suggesting that he or I should approach the President for the President to decide who should investigate these cases. I stated that I found that to be nonsensical. Well, the President's determination was very clear. The cases were referred to my office, and therefore they were handled in my office. There was, commissioners, I mean, a challenge really that we had throughout the work of the Scorpions. There was a tension between the Scorpions and the police. There was a view held that the Scorpions were receiving better media attention, that they were getting better resources, and so those tensions were there. And yet in the final analysis, I was responsible for the prosecution of all cases, coming from the police, from the DSO, from everybody. And so it was in the interest of justice that I made sure that even the police, wherever they were successful in the work that they did. And so these challenges and these tensions would manifest themselves one way or the other. And it was important for me that I try to manage them. This was one of those, because the police here were refusing to give Anton, Mr. Ackerman, the investigators that he was requesting, and use this thing of saying, go to the President. There was no need to go to the President for that. The determination had been made, and it was very clear. And so they were just refusing to assist. You know. So, yeah.
Finally, it's a long time ago, and obviously one's not requiring absolute accuracy, but at the height of the time that you were there, what was the highest number of investigators you can recall you had available?
We probably had roughly about 300, between 300 and 350 investigators, about 55 lawyers, somewhere there, 50, 55, and about 30 or so analysts, and about 5 or so accountants. So that was the number.
And
there were very few.
yes, can you give the Commission, I mean, that's an abstract number, but rooting it with what was happening on the ground, how thinly were those investigators spread, those 320?
Very thinly. You see, the difficulty that, well, it was not a difficulty. I mean, what we introduced were teams. We didn't have one single investigator investigating a case. People worked as teams. So you therefore have a team that will have prosecutors, analysts, investigators, all working together in one particular project. And so it was very difficult just to take one person out of the team, because we had teams, people were working as teams. And everybody wanted all their cases to be investigated by the DSO, and it just was not possible. We didn't have the numbers to do that. It was very, very difficult to decide which cases to take and which cases not to take. All of them deserved the attention, but it was challenging.
Thank you, Advocate Nguka. Chair and members of the Commission, that is all that we wish to lead on. And we're in your hands whether you want to put questions now to Mr. Nguka or
Thank
wait.
you, Mr. Pana. Mr. Siminya, are there any questions to put? Oh, Mr. Vani, any questions of clarifications?
Chairperson, I think it's probably best that we do our questions all at the same time, both by way of clarification
Yes.
and cross-examination.
Thank you. Mr. Siminya?
We also defer to cross-examine after cross-examination by the Galata Group, Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Muroka, sorry about that. Ms. Muroka, I'm used to you sitting that side. So I did not see you seated on this side. You are seated on the wrong side.
The intention, Chair, was to confuse.
Yes, which has succeeded.
Yes, if I may, Chair. Mr. Nguka, can I take you to paragraph 20 of your affidavit?
Correct.
And whilst you put a finger to that paragraph, I want to also refer you to paragraph 40 of your affidavit.
Thank you.
And then read to you what the Constitution says about prosecutorial policy making,
Thank you.
and ask you for your understanding of what this means. The national, it is section 179, subsection 5. It reads as follows: the National Director of Public Prosecutions must determine, with the concurrence of the Cabinet Minister responsible for the administration of justice. And I want your understanding what is meant by with the concurrence of the Minister, of the Cabinet Minister, prosecution policy which must be observed in the prosecution process. Now, that section of the Constitution, read with paragraph 20 of what you have told the Commission, I just wanted to understand what was your understanding of what was supposed, what was your, what were your responsibilities having regard to what you say at 20 and what you say at 40, paragraph 40 of your affidavit.
Okay. You must also read the National Prosecuting Authority Act. I just can't remember which section now, which says the Minister of Justice has the final responsibility for prosecution policy. So what it therefore means is that in determining the policy, one has to work very closely with the Minister of Justice. So that was my interpretation of it, and that's how it worked, and it worked very well in practice.
It talks, the section talks about concurrence, and the dictionary meaning of concurrence, if I may, means in agreement.
Correct.
So I would assume the National Director of Public Prosecutions and the Minister must agree on policy.
That's correct.
And am I to understand that doesn't amount to interference if the Minister were to say,
to ensure that there is smooth functioning of the system, it's very important that you work very closely with the Minister.
there was a time in when we worked very closely together. So I can ask this question. The building that housed the NDPP, what was it called?
It's Victoria and it's VGN building, Victoria and Professor Mklange building, named after the two of them.
Thank you.
Ms. Ranto?
Good morning and thank you, Commissioners. I hope today, Commissioner, I got it right.
Yes.
Am I audible enough? Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning, Advocate Nuka. Mine is about just two questions relating to paragraph 43 of your affidavit.
Sure.
And then I just seek clarity as to whether my understanding is correct in terms of your version, that you are informing the Commission that the issue of De Beers letter was more of lack of adherence to intergovernmental relations by state organs rather than anything else. Is that how
That's
I understand?
correct.
And then another one, just the last one that I thought maybe it's left hanging, the issue of your last sentence where you said you then assigned, I think, Advocate Ramaite and Advocate Leonard McCarthy to resolve the issue. So we're just interested as to outcome. Is it what we understood, that you cannot tell the Commission as to whether such issue was ever resolved, or there was any meeting in that regard?
Yes,
the
I
two
mean,
officials?
sorry. Yes, I mean, the issue really has always been the availability of the investigators. And so Anton wanted the investigators, and he went to the police, he couldn't get, and so he went to to the Scorpions, and there was a tiff to and fro between him and Jeff Letwaba. And I said, guys, deal with these issues. So far as I'm concerned, those issues were dealt with because I was never again informed after that there are challenges, that there are problems. At no stage did anybody come back to me and say, sir, these are the problems that we are experiencing. So when I said the guys deal with these issues, and I was satisfied that the matter had been attended to.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ranto. Ms. Ntloko?
Chair,
Yes.
my apologies, please. There's one last question that I've
Yes,
forgot
Ms.
to ask.
Boroka?
Mr. Nguka, at paragraph 82.2 of Mr. Kalata's affidavit, I'm sure you haven't seen it, I'm not sure if you have. Reference is made to the De Oliveira unit.
Yes.
Are you able to tell us anything about that unit? And if I may tell you why I'm asking the question, is because we've had evidence in this commission that it was absolutely successful, it was a wonderful unit. You talked to us about the difficulties that you encountered as the national director, and the comparison is being drawn that it succeeded where you didn't succeed.
Thank you. The De Oliveira unit, I inherited that unit. Is the unit that did the cases of De Kock, Volta Passon, and others. Indeed, they did a good work. They did very good work. And I then integrated them into the Scorpions. And they carried most of the work that they were doing there. They took it back into the Scorpions. It's the first time that I hear that we didn't succeed with our work. It's a matter of public record that the Scorpions and all the institutions that I ran during my time did very well. And so whoever says that probably is not speaking, telling the truth.
My apologies, can I be more specific with specific regard to the TRC cases?
No, they did not. They were not investigating the TRC cases. The Oliveira unit did not. In fact, the reason why we took some of these cases from the Pretoria office was because they were not being attended to, which is why we brought them into my office, so that they could receive the attention they deserved. So no, they were not handling those cases. I mean, some of the cases which that unit were dealing with when I took them over will include the Helderberg. You remember the plane that crashed outside of Seychelles? They're doing the crash, the President Samora Machel plane crash, the disappearance of Rox Dlamini. They were handling all those sorts of cases. And they continue to do that, but unfortunately, we couldn't succeed with those investigations. But I inherited that unit, and I incorporated it into the Scorpions. There were good people who did a lot of good work.
Are you through, Ms. Moroka?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
My
you.
apologies.
Ms. Ntloko?
Chair, my leader is here today.
Or Mr. Kwala?
Good morning, Commissioners. Chairperson, we do not have clarification questions at this stage.
Yes.
We would, however, reserve a right to do so after cross-examination if needs be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Am I missing anyone?
Chair, we don't have any questions as mentioned, but before I forget, Chair, may I be excused from the proceedings tomorrow? I have to sit with Advocate Anton Ackerman to prepare for the reading of his evidence
Yes.
for later this week. But my learned junior and the rest of my team will be present.
Okay. Thank you for alerting us to that.
As the Chair pleases.
Thank you. You are excused for tomorrow. Advocate Nguga, we thank you for having availed yourself to come and give evidence before this commission. It is greatly appreciated. As has been arranged this morning, you will be recalled to come and be cross-examined by Mr. Vani on behalf of the Kalaka Group. So we hope you will make yourself available for cross-examination. Otherwise, we thank you for having come to give evidence. You are excused as a witness.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Semenya?
Chair, the next witness is going to present evidence virtually. For that reason, might I just ask for a stand down of 10 minutes to get the logistics in place?
We'll take a short adjournment. Mr. Seminya?
Thank you, Chair. The next witness is scheduled for tomorrow. We thought it would provoke no controversy to have the witness today, but it does. So, might the witness stand over for tomorrow?
Yes. These proceedings are adjourned until tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
As the Commission pleases.